Welcome back to the Project Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Lewis, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Nick Carparelli, who is, I don't even know what career to associate you with. You've just done so many things, and you're a man that's worn many hats. You're a man whose career I do appreciate because you've done so many things, and that's pretty admirable, because it's something I want to do. Nick, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Connor. I appreciate you following up. I enjoyed speaking to your class at Rhode Island College. I think it was last semester, and looking forward to talking to you today as well.
So again, this is an interview I've been looking forward to for a good amount of time. I reached out to David Roach, who obviously connected us. I asked for your email. I'm like, this is a guy I need to have on my podcast. You got to help me out here. And he was like, absolutely. And I think the real reason I wanted to speak to you is because you have such an interesting career. One I really haven't seen before. So you go to Syracuse and you get a degree in mechanical engineering. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You go to WPI and get a degree in mechanical engineering, and then you end up doing football operations at Syracuse, like 2 years after graduation or so, if I have that right. How does that happen? Like, I don't know.
Well, little bit of luck, a little bit doing the right thing, conducting myself in the right way at a young age without me even realizing that was important. In high school, I was good in math and science. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, like most 18-year-olds. Wanted to play basketball in college, so I went to WPI, Division III basketball player. Got a degree in mechanical engineering. Was working at Pratt and Whitney in East Hartford, Connecticut. Right after that, designing aircraft engines, and I guess it might sound pretty cool, but it wasn't for me. I was going to work every day saying I can't do this my whole life. So I was very fortunate. My growing up in Cheshire, Connecticut, my dad was my head basketball coach for a while. He shared an office teaching phys ed with Paul Pasqualoni, who then became the head football coach at Syracuse. So we went up to a game. Coach P's first year as head coach in 1991. Was telling him what I was doing, told him I wanted to go to grad school. Season ends. He calls me in January of 1992. He said, Nick, I want you to come up and work for me, be my graduate assistant, help me with all my administrative tasks so I can coach and work with recruiting. And you can get your MBA, but I need you up here tomorrow. So I packed up my car and drove 5 hours to Syracuse and was there the next day. And that kind of launched my career. So I got very fortunate. But I did later on learn that, Coach Pasqualoni is someone I knew since I was 5 years old. And, maybe I was a well-behaved little kid. I was a good student in high school. Him being friends with my dad, I would see him from time to time. He would even come to my high school basketball games. He recruited a couple football players from our high school. And I just made an impression on him at a young age that kind of stuck with him for years. And when it came time to hire somebody, he didn't hire me, he tells me, because to do me or my dad a favor. He hired me because he knew I was a conscientious young man and was going to do a good job for him.
So in saying that, I've heard this a lot from a lot of people I've interviewed that work in sports. Is it more about who you know or what you know in your career?
It's equal both. There are so many people that want to get in sports. Some of them don't even really know why. They just know they like watching sports. They don't realize how much work it is, and it is a job at the end of the day. So it's a very competitive marketplace. So you have to have some type of relationships. You have to network in some way. I think that's true in any career in order to get a good sports job. But to keep the job and to advance your career, you have to be good at it. Because like I said, there's so many people who want those jobs. You're easily replaced. And it's a small world. The sports field is a small world. Coaches know each other, administrators know each other. So if you do a good job for somebody, other opportunities will come up.
So after your time at Syracuse, you end up as a football administrator at Notre Dame. How does that happen? Is it based off, was it a connection you had there, or was it just completely something else?
Yep. So it's, again, a little both. I was a little lucky on the timing. When I got my MBA from Syracuse, I was actually selling pharmaceuticals for a couple of years, waiting for the right, career opportunity to come. And both the offensive coordinator, Kevin Rogers, and the offensive line coach, Steve Adazio, who worked for Coach Pasqualoni at Syracuse and worked with me, they got those same jobs at Notre Dame. And it was late in the summer. the director of football operations and the recruiting coordinator at Notre Dame left for another job, and they're middle of preseason camp, and Bob Davie was the head coach. All right, we got to hire somebody quick, and my guys who were my friends, Kevin Rogers and Steve Adazio, but I also worked with them. They knew what a good job I did. Both went right to him. Said, "We got the guy for you. Like he'll be up here tomorrow, and you won't regret it." So I did. I went up. I interviewed and was offered the job, and pretty cool experience working at the University of Notre Dame and being a part of all those traditions.
Now, what does your day to day look like as a football administrator? Because I'm not sure many people, including myself, we don't really know like what that is. I think it sounds like a cool title, but
Yeah,
I don't think I understand what it really means.
yeah. The director of football operations job in college is a thankless job. It is probably the hub of the wheel when you talk about how does it all work. There's so many people involved in a major college football program, so many duties and tasks to be done. Somebody has to be on top of it all and kind of orchestrate the whole thing. And that's the director of football operations. They meet with the head coach on a regular basis to make sure they're executing what needs to be executed, working with the players on the regular basis, the primary liaison between the football program and the rest of the athletic department, some of who are, while excellent administrators, really don't know what goes into running a major college football program. So sometimes you have to explain things, why you're doing things a certain way, why you want this or that. It is a tough job. It's a job I knew between Syracuse and Notre Dame, and then the Patriots for a short time, that I was good at, but I could not do it for a long time. Like there are some guys that I'm very friendly with, former colleagues and friends that have been directors of football operation for years. I don't know how they do it without getting burned out, but it was a great experience for me because I think it allowed me to learn, everything there is about running a team, a football program, a sports organization, and every job I've had since really plays off of the skills I learned in those jobs.
I interned at URI last semester, and so I got to see people that are heads of whatever sport operation firsthand. And again, I was interning 1 day a week, probably like 5 to 7 hours each time I went in. And these guys were here like multiple hours ahead of me, and then they're there for multiple hours after I leave. So I cannot imagine like how long. Like I don't know how long like an average day for someone that would be. It's obviously not a normal 9 to
It's as
5.
many hours as you're awake, Connor. Literally. I mean, especially during the season, even in some off-season stretches, you wake up, you go to work, and you go home and you go to bed, because that's all there is time in the day. When I was at Notre Dame, and then when I worked for the Patriots, which I know you're going to want to talk about, once training camp started, end of July through the end of the season in January, we may have had 1 or 2 days off, and by that I'm including Saturdays and Sundays. So literally that, 6 month stretch, 2 days that you didn't have to go into work, and one of them was Christmas. So it is a commitment. It's not just a career; it's a lifestyle. For those that are involved in college football and really college athletics, you have to love it. If you're good at it, you can be successful and make a decent living and get paid well. But um, it wouldn't be worth it financially if you were miserable every day and weren't really passionate about the job because you have to be.
So I do want to ask you about the Patriots and how you got involved with them. But I know you work for the bowl games now. But after your time at Notre Dame, were you rooting for Notre Dame during the regular football season, or were you rooting for Syracuse?
I both. They obviously didn't play each other every week, but more so Syracuse. I that was my first job in sports, so whatever you do first makes the biggest impression on you. We were really good when I was there, and I talked to people on a regular basis, all my Syracuse friends, about why we were good, how we were good, and can that be done again today? Because they have not been as successful in the past
Say that.
20 years, really now, since Coach Pasqualoni has left. And and I have a degree from there. I still very active on that campus. I'm on the advisory board for David Falk's sports management program. David Falk was Michael Jordan's agent. He's very involved with the program, so I get to see him on a regular basis. So from a institution standpoint, a college athletic standpoint, Syracuse is my passion for sure.
Okay, because I'm a Notre Dame fan. I just want to see if we'd be friends or not. outside of this. So I guess the answer is no.
Well,
I
they don't
guess
play
we're
each other very often, so I'd say we could be friends 99% of the time.
that's fair. You mentioned luck a lot in the last couple of questions that I've asked you, and that kind of leads into my next question about working with the Patriots because you worked there for the exact amount of time in the exact time frame that they win their first Super Bowl. Was that luck too, or like I feel like there's a common theme here, and I want to know how did that happen?
Well, it was certainly lucky that their first Super Bowl championship season was the one year I was there. Like, what are the odds
Because
of
you got the Lombardi right behind you.
Yeah, it's right there. That's a real, actual replica. People come over and say, "Is that the real thing?" I'm like, "Well, it's not the one that they handed to Robert Kraft, but yes, it's the real thing." Other than that, it's lucky from the standpoint that yeah, right place at the right time. I feel I did a really good job there. I still have a great relationship with Coach Belichick to this day, which tells me I did a good job because I've seen people who aren't very good at their job that work for him, and that doesn't always go so well. Um, I joked with for people your age don't realize that the Patriots were god awful for their
Oh,
entire
I know.
history, minus a couple of year stretches. Bill Parcells had a couple good years, but they were not the Patriots that we know today. Certainly not in the 20 years that Coach Belichick was there. So when I took the job, it wasn't a no brainer. It wasn't like I was going to work for the Green Bay Packers or the New York Giants, who I grew up liking. It was I had to think long and hard about leaving Notre Dame to go to the New England Patriots. But I was fortunate I had the opportunity, fortunate I was smart enough to accept it and have a Super Bowl ring, Super Bowl trophy. And to your question, at the end of that year, I would joke with a lot of the people, the equipment managers, the PR people that had been there for 20 years. I said, I don't know why you were making this out to be so hard, and my work is done here. I'm moving on.
I remember you showed me the Super Bowl, or you showed my class, I should say, the Super Bowl ring when you came into class. I thought that was incredible. That's the first time I ever saw anything like that. And so based off what you're saying, it sounds like you were more important to winning a Super Bowl than Tom Brady himself. Just based off the fact that you were there after him, or you were there during his time, and then they don't win the next year, or they win. I guess they do in the next year.
Yeah,
But
when beginning of that season when I was there, he was not the starter. Obviously, I groomed him and got him ready for that role, and so he was able to step in. So yeah, I mean, if you want to make the case, the whole Patriot dynasty hinged on my hire in February of 2001. I'm not going to argue with you.
all I'm saying is that I think they win at least one of those Giants Super Bowls if you're still there. That's all. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll never know. We'll never know. We'll go. I'll go with that though.
Okay, so then after this, you worked for a couple college organizations. You worked for the Big East next. Do I have that right? After the Patriots.
Yeah, yeah. That was really cool too. I don't. I've had six jobs in sports, and we can kind of tie them all together at some point here. But I honestly love them all. They're all great experiences. But if I had to pick a favorite, probably would be the Big East job. I was there the longest. I was there for 12 years. Growing up in Connecticut, I was always a Big East fan. And that's, I don't know if that's normal or not to be a fan of a conference, but when I was a kid growing up is right when the Big East started, and they were fun to watch, and you could watch more of their games than anybody else. They really built their conference on the backs of ESPN and vice versa. ESPN was launched in 1979, same year the Big East was, and they were each other's first big TV contract. So growing up, I got to see a lot of Big East games. I would root for a different team, it seemed, every week. Like, I just loved them all. So for me to work for the Big East Conference was a little bit of a dream come true. Although for it to be a dream come true, I guess you have to dream about it. It wasn't something I even thought about doing or thought could even happen. So I loved my time at the Big East. I loved all the people. I'm still very connected to the Big East. The 12 years I worked there, obviously the Big East basketball tournament at Madison Square Garden is a big deal every year. Since I left, 12 years since I've been gone, I've gone every year. So this year will be my 25th straight Big East tournament that I've attended. So look for a big celebratory campaign. I'll probably create a little commemorative logo, some giveaways. It'll be very popular, I'm sure.
You are on fire today with the joke. I'm loving this. This is incredible.
My
I am.
sarcasm coming out, Connor. Some people don't get
No, you're
sarcasm.
killing it. I want to know what were you doing in that role? I mean, you were there for so long. You must have enjoyed it a lot. I'm curious to know what your day to day was like.
Yes, that's a good question because you look at my career and the 6 jobs I've had in sports, I started out very much an internal person. I was an operations person, right? Syracuse as a graduate assistant, Notre Dame, I was director of football operations. Same thing with the Patriots. I was doing our team travel and setting up our team meetings and, training camp and, recruiting, free agent visits, all that stuff. So really just like the title is, it was an internal operations job. When I got to the Big East, it was still that. I was in charge of football policies and, I was in charge of, oversaw the whole football officiating program. But I was also, at that time, that's when I started. That job was about 50-50 internal and external. So I was now negotiating our TV contracts, negotiating bowl contracts to find places for our football teams to play in bowl games at the end of the season. Working externally with all of our institutions and our directors of athletics. So it was really kind of an internal job and an external job. So that was really kind of, I did, in a conference office, you do a lot of things, but for me, that was where my career kind of, started to pivot, and it was really kind of a holistic skill set necessary to do the job, where you had to be really a buttoned up internal operations mindset, but at the same time be external, generate revenue, build relationships with people to help the league grow. So I was fortunate to be able to have that job and do all those things.
Sorry, my grandfather just walked by.
That's all right. We love cameos in podcasts.
I don't. I don't even know if he said anything. Honestly, I just think
No,
think he's used to me just doing this in the
don't
basement.
think for a minute he didn't know what he was doing. He just wanted to be on screen for a minute.
I'm not gonna even edit that out. I'm just gonna leave it.
Yeah, good.
Anyway, no, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. All right, but after you work for the Big East, you eventually work for the AAC, right?
Yeah, that was just it was weird. Conference realignment is a constant in college athletics for the last 100 years. Schools changing conferences. We had a major one in 2006 at the Big East, where we lost Miami, Virginia Tech, Boston College, but we added Cincinnati, Louisville, South Florida, Marquette, and really got stronger in a lot of ways. It was despite what people thought might happen, and then you fast forward to 2012, we had another big realignment, and that's where Big East basketball and football separated. So the Big East kind of went back to its roots. The schools in the Big East now, as you probably know, don't have major college football programs aside for UConn, who plays as an independent in football. So the American was really the result of all the football programs that were left and were not a part of the Big East that kind of reseparated. So I was only a part of that for about 6 months as I transitioned out. But yeah, that was an interesting time, interesting process. Conference realignment is very emotional for a lot of people because you get tied to certain schools and certain rivalries, and you have great relationships, and then it changes sometimes for not the right reasons, though.
Yeah, so I am curious to know because obviously there's still some more of your career to cover, but there's a lot of people my age that watch this podcast that are like me that want to work in sports, that want to do all these things that you do because obviously you work so many different lives in your one life. What did you do to separate yourself working all these jobs? I mean, you're going from the Big East, or you're going from the Patriots to the Big East to the AAC. What were you doing to separate yourself? And again, was it just your network? What was it?
Yeah, I think it was all those things. I don't think it was anything I did consciously. I never sat down and came up with a strategic plan and how I was going to present myself and how I was going to forward my career. And all these jobs, even the couple we haven't spoken about yet, I didn't apply for one of them, which I think is an interesting note. Now, I applied for jobs that I didn't get, but every job I got, they found me. Some of them recruited me. Some of them didn't take no for an answer. And I just,
You can
those
walk through. Sorry.
opportunities came from the job I did at the previous location. And I certainly, obviously must have impressed certain people that maybe went on somewhere else and were in a position to hire me. Or at the very least, my employer that I did a good job for was able to give me a good recommendation. And then it was also the networking part. So you need to know people. They need to know you. They need to know your strengths and weaknesses. And also they need to know what your professional career aspirations are. So if a lot of times I'll be a part of a job search, or somebody will ask me, hey, I'm hiring for X, Y, and Z position. Do you know anybody who'd be a good candidate? And I may know a ton of people that are good candidates, but in the back of my mind, a lot of times I'll say, well, that person already has a good job, or why would that person leave this job for that job? But they might. I just don't know that. Having relationships with people who know you, know what you want to do, but then also doing a really good job and to be highly recommended. Both of those things are really important.
I guess that leads right into your next job, which is it director of marketing at Under Armour? Do I have
Yep,
that right?
director of college sports marketing. Yes.
So how closely were you working with college athletes? Was it more like you were kind of the middleman in between? Like, I'm curious to know like what your position was like.
Yeah, so it's every job I kind of to that point I was kind of moving a little bit further from a team, right? So at Syracuse and Notre Dame and the Patriots, I was around the team every day. I was in the team meetings, the coaches' meetings, whatever. At the Big East, kind of one step removed, right? We scheduled the games, we negotiated TV contracts, all that stuff. I would visit the schools, but I really didn't have one team that I was tied to and lived or died with per se. And then you go to Under Armour, and then you're still in the sports world, but even another step removed, right? You're not a part of any sports organization, but we outfitted, a lot of athletes, a lot of sports teams. So, my job, I oversaw a team of 12 people, and we were in charge of outfitting all the major college programs, football, basketball, the whole athletic departments. Um, we were in charge of creating the uniforms, having relationships with those schools, really being handed the keys to the way their brand was treated in the most visible way, right, on the field, on the athletes. And but at the same time, it was our job to also go out and sign new schools, right? So we had to pitch to schools and convince them to switch from Nike or Adidas over to Under Armour, why that was a good move for them, why we would market them better than those other brands, why we would treat their brand better, why we would treat them special. And we would pay them to do it. It was kind of an interesting pitch. We're going to pay you money, but you also have to choose us. Um, but it was a great experience. It was definitely a big shift. That job was very external, right? It was marketing.
Now, were you personally sorry? Were you personally negotiating with these teams? Like, were you a part of that committee of negotiations, or
100%. That was one of the biggest parts of my job. It was identifying which schools had contracts with our competitors that were up, that we could potentially have a chance to sign and steal from Nike and Adidas, but then also to have relationships with the people who would allow us the opportunity to win their business. So, and that's the reason they hired me. I used to have playful discussions with people at Under Armour. I said, you guys think you're in the sports business? You're in the retail apparel business, right? We just happen to outfit athletes, right? They hired me because of my experience working in college athletics, the relationships I had with all the coaches and athletic directors, which would open the door for us to have these conversations in the first place and potentially, um, you know, get to know us, trust us, and go with our brand versus a competitor.
now was there like one deal that you were most proud of, like a steal that you stole from like Nike
Yeah,
or
there
Under
there
Armour
were several
specifically?
that I was proud of. Not the biggest one. Seton Hall was my first deal I did there, and it was a Big East school. Um, and I had great relationships with them, and that was kind of an easy one. It just came together. It was like it was really early on, so that was fun for me. But then the biggest deal for sure was UCLA. So it was a 2-year project. Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, was out in California, went to visit UCLA, saw some people, went to the bookstore, he bought a hat, and he brought it back to the office, and on the hat he wrote, "Sign me." Kevin Plank, and he puts it on my desk. I said, all right, well, that's pretty clear. He wants UCLA. And at the time we had no schools in California. We outfitted 25 Division I programs. We grew to 75 in 4 years in my time there. I was there 5 years total. But so I put together a process, a strategic plan, if you will, to build relationships with the people at UCLA over a 2-year period, knowing that their deal was up in 2 years. I knew a lot of the people there already. I would go out there to see our teams we already did outfit. Every time they played UCLA, I would go there. So I would have a purpose to be there, but they would see me, and I think subconsciously they realized through that process, hey, Under Armour's everywhere. They're out here supporting our teams. They're out at our games. Adidas at the time probably didn't do that for them. So when it came time to pitch to them, they knew we were serious, going into the pitch, and they gave us the opportunity, which not doesn't always happen.
Now, after you work for Under Armour, you work for bowl season, which I don't even think a lot of people know is like a company on its own. Like I think people just assume the bowl game just happened, like just they just appear. And so I'm a little curious to know how you got involved with that and what you're doing there, because I don't think people realize that this is like a whole company. When I was telling my friends I was interviewing you today and I said you work for bowl season, they're like they had no idea what it was. Their faces were completely blank. So I'm curious to know, do you get that a lot? Like do people
I
not
do.
recognize?
It's funny. I'll go back when I was your age, and I didn't even know I would have a sports career. Sports careers weren't even as obvious back then. Obviously, people had them, but there wasn't a path to get there. I didn't even know this job existed, right? Several of the jobs I had, I didn't know existed back then. This one in particular, executive director of bowl season, actually didn't exist. In fact, it didn't exist before I started in this role 5 years ago. It was kind of a vision that the 40 plus bowl organizations had, and they said, look, college athletics is changing. There's NIL, there's transfer portal, there's a lot of competition for the entertainment dollar. We've been operating as independent sports organizations for up to 100 years in some cases. It's time for us to kind of pull together. We'll be stronger as a group than we are individually. We need to hire somebody to really kind of paint this vision. So it was a little bit of a blank canvas. I was very uniquely qualified. I don't think there was a big pool to choose from necessarily. I'd gone to bowl games at Notre Dame and Syracuse. I had negotiated bowl deals to send our teams when I was at the Big East, and then when I was at Under Armour, I did some sponsorship deals with bowl games. So they knew me. I kind of touched bowl games in a lot of ways. And 5 years ago, we launched the bowl season brand. Right, we didn't outsmart ourselves creating a new name. People called it bowl season already. We created a logo. That was the first thing I told the group. I says we need to be more of a public facing brand as a full postseason system. So if I'm going to talk to the media about how great bowl games are, if I'm going to interact with college conference commissioners and talk about our future, I need to know what I'm talking about. What do we even call ourselves? Bowl games, the bowl system, the postseason. So we went with bowl season. We created the logo. It's on the fields. It's growing in value in and of itself as a sports brand. I tell people it's a little bit like the NFL brand versus the New York Giants or the New England Patriots brand, right? There's things that happen at the conference level or the organization level, and the things that happen at the team level. So it's very similar to that in what we do.
So you mentioned the NIL and transfer portal and all these new developments in college sports and more specifically college football. Has that affected your day-to-day at all, or is that kind of just separate things?
It hasn't. It hasn't. I mean, it certainly impacted the bowl games and the bowl system tremendously. But the hardest part of that is there's not much we can do about it. We have very little control. We're at the mercy of the decisions that the conference commissioners make and the NCAA makes. We kind of weathered the storm for a few years with the transfer portal and NIL coming, kind of colliding to cause situations where the regular season ended and players were entering the transfer portal and they're going from one school to the next and chose not to play in bowl games. So we had I'd say we had 3 years where a lot of rosters were depleted. A lot of guys who played on teams in the regular season did not participate in bowl games. That kind of started to fade away in a pretty big way last year. The top 10 Heisman vote getters all played in their bowl games. I think schools are getting smarter with how they pay players. They're not giving them lump sums up front, just like everybody else who does a job. They get a paycheck every week or every month, and they're obviously not going to get their last payment if they don't play in the bowl game. And then recent development, the NCAA just changed the football transfer portal window from the beginning of December to January 2nd to January 16th. So it's after the bowl game. So I think the opt-outs for the purpose of transferring during bowl season is gone away.
Now, Nick, I really appreciate your time. I do have one more question for you. And I'm not sure if you remember us talking about this when you were a guest speaker in my class, but you mentioned the possibility of you writing a book called How I Had the Sixth Best, or I Had the Best Job in the World 6 times, or something along those lines. Is that still in the cards? Is that still a possibility? And will I get a signed copy?
Well, that last question, 100% you will. And obviously, based on that answer, it is still in the cards. I take notes on it on a regular basis. I think, um, yeah, that's kind of the working title. It'll be something along that, like, dream job or the best job in sports, how I got mine 6 times. And I guess the theme is, and we touched a lot on these points during this conversation. It's not to brag about how cool the jobs I had are or were. In fact, I don't even think that.
They're cool though.
Yeah, until somebody like you or people talk, reach out to me in email and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you had all these jobs." I don't really think of it that way because it's just kind of what I did. But the theme is, if you asked me when I was your age, Connor, what's your dream job, I probably would have said president of the New York Yankees. But if I was given that job at your age, I would have failed miserably, and they'd have fired me, and I probably wouldn't even like the Yankees anymore, which they're my favorite. Um,
How
every
about that? How
job
about
I
them Blue
had,
Jays?
every job I had was exciting for me. I was passionate about it. I felt extremely privileged to walk in the door every day and be employed by that organization. I was smart enough and qualified enough to do the job really well, but the job also was challenging enough for me to force me to get better. And over the course of time doing that job, it prepared me for that next job that I wouldn't have been qualified for previously. So every job built on the previous one. Every job helped me prepare for the next one. They were each my dream job or the best job in sports for me at that time because I was uh, good enough to do the job well, but also was able to learn and grow in each job. All the way to this job where it really, the things I need to do to be the executive director of bowl season really pull from all of the previous 5 experiences I had working in sports. The only thing holding me back from writing the book now is, well, other than the fact that I'm, still employed and I have a busy schedule, is I don't think I'm not sure the book is done just yet. It might be 7 times. We'll see.
That's a great answer. I like that last part. Nick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm very thankful for having you on. To all the watchers, to all the listeners at home, I have been your host, Connor Lewis, signing off.